Today we're going to talk about why rotator cuff strength is so important, and we're going to talk about a self-assessment you can do to test yourself for strength of that posterior cuff. Rotator cuff strength, and specifically eccentric strength of the posterior cuff, is important to be able to efficiently decelerate your arm as we're going from external rotation into internal rotation and ball release. Okay, what we see in overhead athletes who have shoulder pain is that there's a discrepancy not just between the strength of their external rotators as compared to their internal rotators, so the backside compared to the front side of their throwing shoulder, but there's also a discrepancy and a weakness when comparing their external rotators on their throwing side to their non-throwing side. So weakness in that posterior cuff in overhead athletes is a big predictor of shoulder pain. For the self-assessment, we're going to use a side-lying dumbbell external rotation test. We're going to test both sides. So first thing on this is we're going to use a rolled up towel or something underneath the armpit just to make sure that we're getting true glenohumeral joint ball and socket rotation. So we're not using the scap in this movement. There's no scap movement, there's no jerking. It's a smooth ball and socket movement where we're keeping very strict form on each rep. So what we're going to do is perform the reps until you get a slight burn, until you're about 2 to 3 reps away from true failure. So we're not taking this all the way to where you couldn't do another rep, but we're just taking it until you feel a pretty good burn, about 2 to 3 reps in the tank. Typically you're going to see somewhere in the range of 8 to 20 reps on each side on this exercise. So what we like to see is guys towards the upper end of that range. Obviously it's going to vary a little bit guy to guy, but one of the big things we're looking for is comparing strength between their dominant and their non-dominant sides. So we're seeing a huge difference, a huge weakness in their dominant side compared to their non-dominant side. That's a red flag. And if we're seeing guys who are very, very strong, high velocity athletes who are towards the very bottom of that range, that's also a red flag because it's showing they don't necessarily have the eccentric strength to properly decelerate with the velocity that they're throwing. So in a lot of these research studies, what they're using to test external rotation strength is dynamometers or manual muscle testers, which are basically 1 rep max testing for your rotator cuff, where at different angles you're going to be pressing into the device and basically testing the strength at which you press into that device. So it's a 1 rep max test for these very small static stabilizers of your shoulder. Not only do most of our guys not have access to these devices, but essentially it's a 1 rep max test for these muscles. It doesn't feel great on your shoulder if you've ever done it yourself, and we like this slightly safer option, which still gives us an idea of if there are any imbalances side to side and of general external rotation strength.